This episode is presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau. Discover the art of adventure at Utah's gateway to the parks. Cedar City is within a few hours' drive from 6 different national parks and monuments, and only 30 minutes from fresh snow at Bryan Head Resort. Check out visitcedarcity.com to plan your next trip. This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center. Dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs, it provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. The center features the Makerspace, where entrepreneurs and small businesses can have access to 3D printers, video production and photography equipment, t-shirt printing, and more. Whether you're starting a new venture or looking to expand an existing one, the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center offers the tools and guidance to help you succeed. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Hello and welcome to another episode of Explore Local Podcast presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head in partnership with Cedar City Iron County Economic Development. This is produced by Dallas Smith Media, and I'm your host, David Johnson, Economic Development Director for Cedar City and Iron County. All right, today we have Maria Twitchell, who is our Executive Director for the Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau?
Yes.
Okay, I just always call it Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism
well, we
office,
have
or Visit Cedar City Bryan Head. That's what most people know it as.
Yes.
Is Visit Cedar City Bryan Head,
yes.
right? But the official is.
But we have many names.
You have many names.
Names because we've gone through many iterations over the years. So, but we are Visit Cedar City Bryan Head, the Tourism Bureau for Iron County.
Okay, and I just learned right before in utter shock that you are also the Parks and Recreation Director for the city.
No, for the county.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the county. I knew not the city. Sorry, I said city. For the county, for Iron County.
For Iron County, yes.
And how long have you been the Parks and Recreation Director?
Since 2013.
So when did you start doing the Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Executive Director?
So I've been the Executive Director since 2005, but I actually started with the county in that tourism department back in like 1996.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually, it was 1995 because I'm actually hitting my 30 years with the county.
Wow, that's awesome.
So,
and we'll dive into the tourism side, but did you grow up in Iron County?
I did. I grew up in Cedar City, so I am a native, yes.
And you went to Cedar High School?
I went to Cedar High School. I graduated in 1989. I actually graduated with President Benson from SUU, and my boss, Mike Blake, who's the county commissioner. We all grew up together.
That is so fun.
Yeah, so it's all interlocal, as I like to say it. We're all combined together in one way or the other.
So what was your original position with the Office of Tourism?
So I actually started as an intern. So
really?
I was attending Southern Utah University. I was going out in a communications marketing aspect, and I needed an internship in order to graduate. And my parents knew the lady who was in charge of the tourism office for Iron County, and they said, well, why don't you go talk to her? You'd be a good fit.
Yeah.
And so I did, and she was a one-woman show. She was running this bureau, and she needed some help, and her name was Lori Garfield. A lot of people know her from this community, and she's like, yeah, let's have you come in and be an intern. And sure enough, that internship turned into
a full career.
And so when my internship was over, she's like, let's bring you on because you're very helpful. And I just helped her for a couple of years, and then they decided that, they needed a marketing director because that's where the funds come from is, it's supposed to be spent on marketing. And so they made me a marketing person for the county and for this office. And then when she retired, they're like, yeah, you might as well just, let's move you in full time and become the director. And then it was a very small office. It was the two of us for a really long time. And then when I became the director, it was still a small office. I had an assistant, and she's still with me. Her name's Amber Bennett. And and then we've been growing the office over the years. But back in 2013, they decided that the county decided that they needed to have more like departments kind of more centralized. And so their parks department was under like their emergency management person.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were like, hey, it makes more sense to put that under tourism.
Right, absolutely.
That's where some funding might be available. And it just worked out.
Trails and all those kinds of things, yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the county has some parks infrastructure. So we have 4 parks.
Yeah, I was going to say, name
the
what some of the
parks.
parks are in the county, because typically you see that like with cities, but counties don't always have parks and different things.
A little
and it
unheard
varies
of.
from county to county, I guess.
Yes. I mean, all these departments, tourism department, parks, recreation department, they all have kind of, they all operate differently.
Yeah.
But with ours, so the county has recreation areas with all this land and whatnot. And so over the years, they've been creating partnerships with, and, these land opportunities. So Three Peaks Recreation Area, which is Bureau of Land Management, but within it is this little, about 150 acre park.
Oh, wow. This little 150 acre park.
Well, when you look at Three Peaks and all, that's like the little park inside is the county park.
Yeah.
And
there's rock climbing and like disc golf there, right? I want to say.
There's disc golf, there's mountain biking.
Yeah, I severely lost a disc when I went disc golfing there. Like the wind we're on one of those ledges and the wind just like took it. And I hiked forever down this little ravine trying to find it. And I found someone else's, but never found mine.
Never found you. So does that count? I don't know.
It's something, we'll throw from here.
So it's Three Peaks is more of a year-round park, I would say. It's because it's low elevation. Just around the corner from that is the shooting range. You go down the shooting range road.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So we have a shooting range that we oversee. And then up the canyon, up Highway 14 is the Wood Ranch Recreation Area.
Oh, right.
Which has been around for, at least 50 years.
And that's where we start the Cedar City Half Marathon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a little recreation area there that's very popular. It was donated by the Wood family, I believe back in the 40s for recreation development.
Yeah.
And then the county has overseen it and operated it for, that long and has overseen its development as well. And then...
okay, I got to tell you a tangent story, though, real quick. That park, so my daughters were camping, like a girls' camp thing. There's a campground. If you go past that park and go up and around, there's like a dirt road that leads to a campground, right? When I was new here last summer, new-ish, I didn't know about the road kept going up and around. And Google Maps told me to go that way. Go through that park and up what I would describe as like an ATV road. And I originally was in my van, my Honda Odyssey, and I'm like, there's no way. And Google did not give me any other route option. So I went back home, got my truck, and put it in 4-wheel drive. And I'm like, this is one of the roughest roads I've ever taken my truck on, only to learn by the time I got there was a whole different route to get down. What's that campground up there? I can't remember what it's called.
Deer Haven, or I think it's Deer Haven.
Probably Deer Haven, yeah.
It's group campground. That's operated by the Forest Service.
Yeah,
So
and it was in the dark, because by the time I went back, got my truck, was driving up there. I'm going. Anyways,
don't trust Google.
Don't trust Google. In fact, you could probably trust the Visit Cedar City Brian Head website to give you directions to some of these places.
I would trust our website
over Google.
over some Google. I mean, we've seen some issues where Google has sent people over a dirt road, like over Colab Reservoir Road, and you're just like, hey, it's wintertime. There's, 20 feet of snow.
Yeah, well, the off-road recovery channels really don't mind that.
Most people who come to visit probably shouldn't be doing that, but
that's true.
It is what it is. And so we're always like, hey, plan ahead and make sure you know where you're going, and maybe call and ask.
Yeah, exactly. Which is actually a good little side tangent of a lot. You know what? I want to get into that later, but kind of talking about the side tangent of, some people, the Visit Cedar City Brian Head Office of Tourism, you're there to help guide people of where to go and what the safe opportunities are. because there are people that come out, they don't know where they're going, they get lost, search and rescue. Matt's off-road recovery or whatever recovery YouTube channels out there saving people, right? But I mean, that's what's great. But I interrupted you and you were about to list some of the others. So you named like those 3 different parks.
So we have Wood Ranch, and then we've actually done a special use permit with the Forest Service for a park in Parowan Canyon called 5 Mile. It was listed to be decommissioned because in 2017, when the flood came through after the fire, it took out all the infrastructure and just kind of laid it to waste. Is that a little
dirt trail?
So if you know where Noah's Ark Trail is, it's that area right there.
Is it one that leads to like some waterfalls?
No, that's Hidden Haven. That's a little further up. So if you are heading up Parowan Canyon on Highway 143, it's there's a road that goes towards Yankee Meadow. You go up 1 mile and it's on the right-hand side. So we have been working on that park since like 2019, and we're opening it officially on May 1st of this year. So it had a soft opening last year, but the official opening is this year. I mean, lots of work have gone into that park. My park personnel have really just outdone themselves.
How many staff do you have?
I have
total?
2 staff plus seasonal.
Okay, gotcha.
And then we utilize whatever resources we can find through grants or through county, some of the other county departments. So to create this development. And,
what improvements have they made?
So it was completely cleared out of trees and everything that washed up during that flood. And then we had to put back all of the like picnic infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
So tables and grills and trails. And we had to do a lot of work on the stream. So the Bowery Creek runs right through it. And that's what flooded. And it just, the spillage that came out of that flood just was everywhere. And so we had to clear that up and clean that up. So, if it ever floods again, hopefully it doesn't, but it's one of those things. It doesn't take out the infrastructure again. So, but it's a great example of partnership because here it was listed to be decommissioned, but it was very beloved by the northern Iron County residents, your Parowan, your Paragoon, your Bryan Head. And it was a great area. It's a beautiful place. And so the fact that the county came in and said, let's figure it out.
Right.
And create a partnership with, the Forest Service, as well as go after grants through the Utah Office of Outdoor Recreation. It just is for me, it's a beautiful example of what can be done when people want something to happen. And it's an example of what happens in Iron County, in my opinion. Yeah. We're just like a group of people who we figure it out.
You band together.
That's
something I always talk about. I've mentioned several times on the podcast. A lot of collaboration to make something happen.
Lots of collaboration. It's like sometimes I think ego gets in the way of progress. Mm-hmm. And I see it here as like we kind of put that, we have a vision. We all want everybody to succeed. We want everything to be good. We all want to take part. And so, and when we see something, we figure it out through our relationships and our networks. And so I love to use that example of what we have been able to do with Parks and Recreation.
That is so cool. It still blows my mind that you're over Parks and Recreation as well, but it makes a lot of sense to me, especially with some of the things that we're gonna, I guess, get into. There was one thing that you made me think of when you're talking about like the picnic tables and things, and I've actually not been to this location that you're talking about. I've been to Hidden Haven, did you say? Which that's not county.
It's not county
maintained, right?
It's on some land that you would think it'd be like BLM or the Forest Service, but it's not. It's something with the Division of Natural Resources for the state.
Oh, okay.
And so it has its own, it's challenged in that it floods a lot. And then I think that the overseeing property owner, the division, isn't necessarily in the recreation world. And so we want to, that is definitely a project on everybody's radar. It's like, let's figure something out there.
It's a total gem too.
Yeah, it's a huge gem.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was thinking about too, though, when you're talking about the picnic tables and clearing out, I trail run a lot. My family, we hike a lot, and I'll go to places and I'll see like a picnic table. Sometimes only like a half mile in, and sometimes like 5 miles into something. And I'm like, who hiked all these things here? Or you'll see little retaining walls, right? And I'm like, who hiked in all this stuff? Even with a wheelbarrow, this would be miserable, to hike this in. So when you talk about staff outdoing themselves, and I don't know that your staff really had to hike stuff in, but I mean the labor intensive effort to make trails, to make picnic areas for these recreational opportunities, it's a lot more work than you realize.
Yes, I think people have no idea as to what has to happen in order for that infrastructure to be there. And we prioritize infrastructure because we want to make sure that the experience of our guests as well as the residents of Iron County is good. Yeah. We want it to be a beautiful experience. And so if there's not a restroom facility or a place to sit or a trash can, it has, there's impacts.
Yeah.
So so having us all under the same umbrella, we're going towards the same goal, I guess you could say. Let's ensure that experience is wonderful. And then there are people who are truly passionate who will pack that bench in 5 miles and, do what they need to do. So that, there's something there. The infrastructure's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, talking about Hidden Haven again, sorry, I'm going to digress on this too, so I had a buddy he's like a big time rock climber, rappeller, and he was coming in from Minnesota and he's like, hey, we're going to go rappelling down a couple waterfalls. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And, I have a couple teenage daughters or a few teenage daughters. We took my oldest to, and he's got a couple teenage daughters as well. And he takes us there. And while we're going there, I'm like, I think my second oldest has rappelled before, but I don't know about my oldest. So I asked my oldest, and I was like, have you ever rappelled before? And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh, crud. And we get there, and he's a really experienced guy. He took us down there. But the first one, I looked down, I'm like, how far down is that? And he's like, I don't know, maybe 100 feet or so. I'm like, 100 feet, and there's like a rushing waterfall, which for anyone listening, Hidden Haven, if you like rappelling, at least I've been rappelling and rock climbing a ton throughout my life. I'm no expert by any means, but I looked at it and I'm like, this is not for beginners. And I was a little worried about my daughter, but luckily my buddy's really experienced and it was so beautiful. I got these really cool pictures of my girls rappelling down these waterfalls. And then there was a second one. And then there was a third one. I think there's 3 total, if I'm not mistaken.
If I remember right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's kind of, well, I guess depending on the time of the year, there was like little pool areas as you would go down. I don't recommend ever taking someone that's never been before. That's something I probably wouldn't do again for my kids, acclimate them more. But the reason why I'm talking about this is there are so many little hidden gems like that in Iron County. I mean, we know of some of the big dogs like Cedar Breaks National Monument and some of those things. So I'm curious, obviously we don't want to spoil all the local hidden gems because we don't want those necessarily to be overrun. We want to direct people that are visiting to certain areas. Yeah. Mostly so it won't get overrun, but also so that it's some of those hidden gems aren't maintained as well, like what you're talking about. Yes. And so if something gets messed up or overrun, it's a lot bigger of an effort. I mean, I've been on so many different trails, and sorry, I'm blabbing right now, where, there's like a little retaining wall out of logs, and you walk past it, and then another year you go by, and that retaining wall is given way, and there's a 10-foot gap, and you can't continue the trail. And what used to be an easy stroll is now an impassable hike. And people don't realize, whether through erosion or just wear and tear, the effort that goes into making those things happen. Sorry, I'm going on.
But so Hidden Haven is a prime example of that. That used to be a very basic, really, a lovely trail. But that flood came through and it just carved out almost a canyon through that creek. And so what used to be an easy hike is now not. It's just
more of an effort.
It's more of an effort. And so we're very, very cautious and I get some flack for this, but we want, if we're going to promote it, because that's my job, that's my real job. If we're going to promote it, it has to have the infrastructure in place. So it has to have a trailhead. It has to have, an operator, meaning it's either on a land manager or somebody who's overseeing it to ensure that it's, that there is at least some level of maintenance happening. So, and so people are like, well, why don't you promote this? And I'm always kind of like, well, because the infrastructure isn't there, and we want to prioritize safety. We want people to be safe. We want to prioritize the experience. We want people to have a great experience. We also want to make sure that the person who owns the land is okay with people walking in that, hiking in that area or utilizing that area.
Yeah. Okay with us promoting it.
And okay with us promoting it. And so you kind of find these interesting opportunities. So like Canaryville Falls is another great example of something kind of like that happening and how we've kind of come together to create a better experience because
So describe Canaryville Falls and then dive into that.
So Canaryville Falls is a trail right outside of the town of Canaryville. Like it's literally like the trailhead is right there in the town. It was a local favorite. Nobody knew about it. And then with the internet and social media, it got an incredible amount of attention in a short amount of time. And we were kind of part of that. I'll be honest. Sure. We were learning, and Canaryville came to us and the county and said, "You've got to stop. We've got to figure something out. We're tracking, 40,000 people through our residential area, and they're going in there, and these people are not necessarily treating our trail well, this area well. This is our water source. We've got to figure something out."
Well, and sometimes even if people are treating a trail perfectly, just a volume of individuals can create a natural wear and tear that's gonna hurt that trail, right?
Yeah,
and so people could be very good stewards, but the volume sometimes impacts that.
It has an impact, and so and it was an impact that Canaryville was like, this is an impact that we can't pay for. We can't, this can't continue,
right?
And do we put up a gate and not allow anybody in, or can we figure out a way to manage it and mitigate it? And so we all came to the table, the BLM, the county, Canaryville, because part of it's on BLM land, and we came up with a system, a permit system. We implemented it to about 150 people per day, but didn't go over very well at first because people were like, "Oh, it's my trail" and whatnot. Well,
that's a pretty reasonable number of people every day.
Yeah, it manages it in a way that you have that visitor. The reason why people were going in there was to see those waterfalls and go up that log ladder. That was the iconic moment, and
that was the iconic picture. That log ladder by the waterfall is just beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've seen all over the world. It's an international destination.
Yeah,
because of these pictures that people were taking and posting on social media. And so they were like, well, let's limit it to 150 people. And it was an agreement. We're all kind of like, yeah, let's.
When you created the buy-in on it.
Yeah. And then we helped them. We all got together and said, putting it out there into the world, we're protecting that experience. Because it's like when you were going to go up that ladder, it could have been a 2-hour wait without however many people were in that little tiny slot canyon.
This, 8 rung ladder or whatever.
So for me, I'm like, it was hard for people to accept at first, but now because it's managed and it's a great experience, there is some cost involved in getting the permit to go up there to be part of the 150, which now is like 200. They've, kind of extended it. There's money available to the town of Canaryville to maintain and continue and provide the bathrooms and all the services, the trash removal. So I love that example of need, community, and partnership, all just figuring it all out.
Well, I like how you started that by saying Canaryville came to you guys and said, whoa, what's going on, right?
Stop it.
Well, and that kind of happened. And I still want to talk about Canaryville Falls, so I'm not going to digress this way too much. But that kind of happened when the state did the Mighty Five campaign, right, to promote our national parks. Like we were just trying to build up more visitorship or tourism, and it became so successful that we weren't prepared, not just for the trail infrastructure, but our local communities weren't prepared for their road infrastructure, lights, restaurants, hotels. And that was a learning lesson.
Yes.
But it was a huge boom for our economy as a state and as an area down here where all the national parks are. And sometimes, and that's why I said earlier, like we in tourism, especially with outdoor tourism, I had a staff member when I was in southeastern Utah, I would say that we choose the areas that we want tourists to go so that we can invest in those specific areas, and the other areas can be our hidden gems, or if someone is experienced, they can know how to navigate that. And we'll have fewer people going. So we know we'll have more wear and tear here, but our resources are invested in the wear and tear here.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to worry as much about some of these other areas, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that a bit with Canaryville Falls because now the wood ladder's not there anymore, right? Now it's
it washed away.
Yeah. And it went through a couple iterations of stairs. So you want to tell a little bit? It's not as picturesque anymore without the wood ladder.
It's not the
but
same.
It's still a cool experience, but it's just quite not.
It's different, but I think that Canaryville did the best thing that they could. I mean, if the iconic ladder washes away and you can't find it, you can't put it back.
Well, and it's almost ironic, though. It is a good example of how volume can impact something. So what was so beautiful about that is it was serene and peaceful and quiet. No one was there. There's this wood ladder. Just felt like you were the only one there when you look at that photo. And now they had to go to, I think it was metal steps, right?
So they went to a aluminum step, kind of, it almost looked like a ladder that you put in your house. But and then last year they put in more of a wrought iron. It's more in keeping with the surroundings, and but it still provides the safety of going up steps and whatnot. It is sad that the little wood ladder isn't there anymore, and it's not, but it's still a beautiful hike, and it's still just as it's still iconic in that it's very accessible. I mean, when you think about it, it's 12, just a few miles off the interstate, as opposed to something like you see in like the Grand Staircase or even in Zion. This is something that people can do pretty immediate.
Well, and you don't have to. You don't have to hike in 10 miles or drive an extra hour before you get to the trailhead, right?
Yeah.
It's just right there.
It's just right there. And so that accessibility makes it very attractive. And the fact that it's managed makes it attractive as well. There's some schools of thought that just let everybody do whatever they want. But when you're trying to attract people to come in and spend dollars, which is my job. Yeah. So we want them to have as best of an experience as possible. Right. We also want them to leave it as, we live here, and we want to make sure that the guests that we're inviting in here leave it in a nice way so that we can enjoy it as the people who live here. Yeah. And so we try to be very, very, very careful with what we're doing. And like you were saying, over where you used to live, we look at areas that we can develop this because it can it can take
the volume.
It can take the volume.
Yeah, it can handle.
And then we leave some of this to those that want to find that quiet experience. And, we can't have all the uses happening all at the same time. We have to have areas where people can have peace and quiet. Or that's what we want to have is when we're doing our strategies and when we're looking at the development of this destination, we want to make sure that people have areas where there's peace and there's quiet and they can just do non-motorized. And then there are areas where we can have motorized and they can, do all the fun play with toy on the motorized
ATVs,
toys.
dirt bikes.
And so we're really lucky here because we have so much diversity in terms of the landscape and, and we have great public partners. And so there's lots of opportunity for everyone.
Okay. So that's actually a good segue into something that I now want to kind of go more high level. So what are like the main like areas of tourism in Iron County that you're like focal points? Is it like 5 specific areas that you would categorize them in or you know what I'm getting at? What are some of those main areas of opportunity?
So because we operate by taxes, the taxes that are generated through tourism, which is TRT, transient room tax, which is
comes from hotels.
Tax.
Yeah.
And then we also see what's called a restaurant tax, which is prepared food in Iron County. So we look at the areas in which those taxes are generated. So it's Cedar City, Parowan, and Bryan Head for the majority. So we look at what so that's where we concentrate. And then we look at natural resources, so it's either national parks, outdoor recreation, like skiing, hiking, biking. And then we also look at cultural. So because of the history of the Utah Shakespeare Festival and, that longevity, and then everything that's spurred from it, we concentrate a lot on cultural tourism as well. So national parks, outdoor recreation, cultural, those are the pillars or the areas that we focus on based on those communities. Now we do look at Canaryville, of course. Yeah. And Enoch, but that's generally that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And then the natural resources and so on.
Okay. So if I were Joe Schmo, whether I'm a local or no, let's maybe tell me if you would do it differently. If I'm a local or if I'm a tourist and I come to you and I say, hey, I want to experience a little bit of everything. I want a little nibble on everything of opportunity here. And you can't necessarily like this time of the year, you could maybe ski and hike at the same time or something. So let's just say the opportunities for the winter stuff and the summer stuff are available at the same time. What are like, if I'm like, give me, 5 things or 3 things, what things would you recommend that I go check out?
So Cedar Breaks, even though the road through Cedar Breaks is only open in the summer and the fall, they have invested in some opportunities in the winter and springtime. So where you can go see the dark skies and you can snowshoe, hike in. So we would say go to Cedar Breaks and try to experience it that way, one way or the other, whether it's by car, driving through, or snowshoe, or snowmobile, or whatever. And then we would say go ski Bryan Head, of course, or learn to ski or experience that. And then we would bring them down into like Parowan and say Parowan Gap. With the petroglyphs, because that's a cultural, it's a historic cultural site.
Is that kind of a hike too?
It's actually, the great thing about it is it's so accessible. It's right off the side of the road.
Oh, okay. Kind of like Newspaper Rock over by Moab area.
Yeah, it's like that, but almost better because
Canyonlands, I guess it's closer to.
It's just, you pull in, there's all the things and the interpretation. It's a little bigger. It's the biggest concentration.
Really? I didn't know that. I haven't gone and seen this yet.
Other than like so there's 9 Mile up in eastern Utah, but that's like all over. Like you have to, it's a trip. Here it's there's so many concentrated in this one spot. And it's just right off there's a paved road right off Highway 130 or.
Is that the road on the way up to Bryan Head?
No, that's 143. So from Parowan, you just head west. From Cedar City, you're heading north.
Okay.
And then there's a paved road. You literally drive through a gap between 2 mountains. That's why it's called Parowan Gap. And you just stop and there's the petroglyphs. So you'll do that. There's some dinosaur tracks nearby. You can go do that too. And then I would say come into Cedar City, go to the Beverly Center. Whether the Utah Shakespeare Festival is happening or not, the Beverly Center has so much, some beautiful art and just a beautiful place to walk around. There's statues. There's just, it's just a really calming place. And then the Southern Utah Museum of Art is right there.
And that's free to the public.
And it's free to the public.
Yeah.
So where do you see a museum? And I don't know if, for those who've never been to the Southern Utah Museum of Art, that museum should be in New York.
Yeah.
Or, it looks like a metropolitan museum.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I guess maybe not everybody loves that style, but I think it just adds so much value to our community right there.
And it's free. I mean, you just like, what? It's a free museum. So you're kind of like, well, is it going to be good? And it's good.
Yeah.
It's so good, and it rotates. So, all the exhibits rotate. So we definitely hit them. We'll say definitely hit that. Though that's, where we
Kind of
like
the
to
spectrum.
people, the spectrum. If Cedar Bricks is not obtainable, we always send them to Kolob. And that's a great.
So go into Kolob. I do want to go
Kolob.
into that. Yeah. So tell us about Kolob more.
So Kolob is the northern section of Zion, but it's
Zion National Park.
Zion National
for those
Park.
That don't know. Yeah.
But it's really kind of far removed from the main canyon. But it's so cool because the Interstate 15, runs right by it. And so you get off at exit 40, you pay your fee, and you drive less than a quarter of a mile. You go around this corner, and then there's Kolob, this big, beautiful, breathtaking national park right off the interstate. It's so unassuming. You're just like, what happened? Because there's this mountain that kind of hides it from the interstate. And you go around this corner, and then, wow.
It just opens up.
And you're seeing these canyons and these high red rock tower walls. And you just drive to the end. It's just 5 miles in. But there's hiking, there's viewpoints.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful, small little park and a section of Zion that doesn't get a lot of attention.
Well, and it's not directly connected with the rest of Zion, right?
Yeah, it's like there's this little section that connects it all together.
Or I mean, at least it's not connected by roads.
It's not connected by roads.
The park is all connected, right?
It's within the boundary. It was added later on after Zion was established. Oh, really?
I didn't know that.
Because it's a wilderness area.
Yeah.
And so they decided just kind of, let's put it all together. I can't remember, but it was, back in the day. And so National Park Service oversees it. But it's just a beautiful little section and a quiet little place that you can go and
what do you know enjoy. The names of some of those trails?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
that's my job.
How many trails are there? Do you know?
There's like 3 really designated trails, and then there's some connection aspects as well. So there's Lee's Pass, which is like 15 miles. It actually takes you to the Kolob Arch, which at one time was the world's largest arch, natural arch. And then one day they decided to measure it, and then Landscape Arch beat it, I guess, in Moab.
In Moab?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
one day they decided to measure it.
One day they decided to get the instruments out and say, let's
make this official.
Let's make this official. So
you're talking about Delicate Arch in Moab in comparison to?
No, I believe it's Landscape Arch. I can't remember.
That's the largest one.
But there's an arch in Moab in that county. And so in Canyonland.
This arch, Lee's Pass, what's this arch called?
It's called Kolob Arch.
Oh, it is Kolob Arch.
Yeah. And so it's on the Lee's Pass.
Listening skills, Dave.
It's on the Lee's Pass Trail, which connects to Hop Valley, which then connects into the main canyon of Zion.
Okay.
There's all these little connection trails, but it's for backpackers. It's you want to go on. This is a great trail to go on. But it's really long. But
yeah, I know Hayden Hawks, when he was on the podcast, talked about, I think it was probably that trail that he'll run into into Zion.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it. So there's this, it connects to Zion eventually. And then there's the Timber Creek Trail, which is at the end of the road for Kolob. So when you take Kolob, it kind of comes to an end and you turn around and go back. They've built a trail that takes you kind of out to the south for about a mile, and so you get a different view into the canyons. And then there is the Double Arch Alcove Trail, which is probably their most popular trail. And it's right as you come into the park, and it takes you. It's like 3 or 4 miles in, and it takes you to this big, beautiful alcove that it's kind of archy. It has an arch, but it doesn't it's not all the way through. Yeah. And it's a really, really beautiful spot. Yeah. But it does take you a minute to get there.
I like the official term. It's archy.
It's archy.
It's arch-esque.
Not quite all the way through, but you can see the arches forming. Maybe when we come back in a million years, it'll be an arch. So,
it's funny when you talk about arch. I used to live, kind of the Moab area and natural bridges. And my kids would always talk about the distinction between arch and a natural bridge, and I'm trying to remember what that distinction is and how they're formed. Do you remember?
You can tell me.
I'm pop quizzing you.
You would you would ask me that today, but I thought an arch it actually had to be you can see all the way through it.
A bridge you can too, but there's something to do. And those listening can correct us and comment, but there's something to do with how it's water and water forms. Dallas is going to look it up online for us.
A natural bridge is formed by erosion from water. An arch is wind, rain, which is also water, but thawing.
Freezing thawing, is that the arch?
Yes.
The one in natural bridge.
Because it cracks away and then it freezes and cracks away. So, yeah.
By the way, Kolob Arch is smaller by 3 feet.
Really?
Yep.
By 3 feet.
3 feet.
Dallas, our fact checker here.
I love it.
Nice. Awesome. Is Kolob Arch more of a long arch, or is it more of a tall arch? Or
it's longer and tall. It's like way up in the canyon, on the hillside. So
I don't know why I haven't gone yet.
Because it's a trek, you have to you want to be prepared to do it.
How much of a hike is it? 90 miles?
Most people take it in about 8 hours.
8 hours? Yeah. There and back.
There and back.
Oh, okay.
So 7-8 miles in.
Oh, okay.
Or so. So it's a trek. For sure.
I can get that done in 30 minutes. It's
fine. Yeah. So
is there and back 7-8 miles, or is it there's 7-8 miles?
Where's our fact checker? It seemed like to me it's 8 miles in, but
Which hike is it?
The Kolob Arch.
Kolob Arch. Yeah. As we're listening to this typing sounds of Google from our producer Dallas Smith.
14 miles round trip.
Yeah,
14 miles round trip. Okay,
in,
7 miles in. Okay, all right, that's good to know. Okay, well, talk to me now. I mean, we've been talking outdoors, but there's so much more to tourism in Iron County than the outdoor stuff. So highlight wherever you want to go. What are some of the other things that you want to highlight? Or are there other aspects of outdoors that maybe we should cover first?
Well, I think when you look at what makes you unique, what's your marketing position? Yeah. And so much as Southern Utah is Red Rocks and outdoor recreation. And so we get kind of lost. We can certainly get lost in all of that, particularly with the national parks in other counties. So I feel like what makes us stand apart from everyone else is the fact that we have all this culture. We have a Tony Award-winning Utah Shakespeare Festival here in Cedar City. And if you were to look at that festival on paper and Cedar City, you'd be like, what?
How in the world?
How in the world did this happen? Cedar City is...
Meaning like our population size and everything, right?
Yeah, we're like 28,000 people. And
Cedar City's 40,000 people, just FYI.
I thought it was Iron County. It was 40,000.
Iron County, 65,000. Yeah.
Things have
Cedar
changed.
City's like 40. You've been here 30 years. so we're not in the 90s anymore. We're not in Kansas anymore.
No, we're not in Kansas. Well, anyways, but still, I mean, we're not a metropolitan by any.
Yeah, definitely. By comparison to metropolitan, 20,000 population to a 40,000 population is just not even a difference.
It's not even a difference. We are rural, and here we are with a theater festival that puts on 7 to 8 plays, and a summer and fall season. We bring in actors from New York City and LA and
directors from all over the world.
Directors all over. We've had actors who've come here who have gone on to become big names.
Ty Burrell with Modern Family.
Yeah.
Okay, by the way, his photo, Stuart was showing me the photos. I think it was Stuart. And he's like, and that's Ty Burrell. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I'm like, there's no way that is Ty Burrell from Modern Family. And so I Googled some of his young pictures, and he has much more broad, like 80s chin, you know?
Yeah.
And I sent a picture to my different family members. I'm like, guess who this is? And nobody could guess. And then I did a side by side, and they're like, it's Ty Burrell. Yeah, I'm like, what? Anyways, sorry, another digression. But we've had amazing actors come through.
We've had amazing actors. We've had amazing actors who have been in TV and movies who've come here to just kind of like, I just want to do summer theater.
Want to check it out? Yeah.
And so we've had them here. And you're just like, wait a minute, where? Here in little Cedar City.
Yeah.
On the corner of, 300 and Center Street. Here we are, 3 grand theaters, big, beautiful theaters. One's gilded in gold. I mean, and you're just like, wait a minute. But it's great because you can go out and have this national park or this outdoor recreation experience during the day, and then you have something to do at night. Yeah. Some entertainment. That's life affirming and beautiful and well done. And so you can go to the Utah Shakespeare Festival and have that experience. You can walk into the Southern Utah Museum of Art,
which is right there in the same campus.
And see, like, they had Warhols, the Warhol paintings not too long ago. I mean, you're surprised at the caliber of what we're able to do in this small community that takes pride in that. We love the fact that we are the home of the Utah Shakespeare Festival. Yeah. And that we're the gateway to the parks. And, we just embrace it. Yeah.
And gateway to the parks designation by Union Pacific, because here, Cedar City was where people used to come to see the national parks, the Mighty Five.
The Mighty Five. Yeah. That's where our history started. Yeah. They would, Union Pacific invested heavily in Cedar City because that's where the trains would be able to come in. It's the only way people could access the parks, back then in the 30s and the 40s. And they'd get off in Cedar City and they'd get on buses and they'd head out to the parks, and then they would come back to Cedar City. And here's a community that's, had the infrastructure to help take care of them.
So I'm going to combine both the Shakespeare Festival, even though it wasn't a Shakespeare Festival back then, what I'm about to get to, Shakespeare Festival and the outdoor stuff. Shakespeare Festival, first of all, has also trickled in the community, or vice versa, where we have wonderful children's theater. We have lots of little theater troupes and groups. And then when we're talking about rail and gateway to the parks, now what I'm going to dive into, and we just recently had a 100-year celebration of Cedar City. Iron County is the birth of filmmaking in Utah. Now, originally, and I know previous guests have kind of gone into more details about this. Now we know Kanab is like the poster child for filmmaking in Utah, but just on a very high note, touch on how filmmaking got its start here. And was it last year to hit the 100-year mark? Yeah,
it was the 100-year mark. So, and the state of Utah had celebrated for an entire year filmmaking, and this whole idea of so back in the 30s, or when film was first started, the films were only filmed on back lots, so studio lots. Because that's all that they could figure they could do. So here in Cedar City, we had some industrious brothers, the Perry brothers, who were sitting in their little office on Main Street, realizing that Union Pacific was bringing in all this infrastructure to go out and see the parks. And they were developing their own program, their own company to help support that. But one of them was like, hey, I know these guys in Hollywood. Wouldn't it be awesome if, we've got this landscape. Why don't we go out and see if they want to come here and start filming these westerns, these landscapes as part of their filming. And so prior to that, Hollywood wasn't taking their films outside of those backlots. And so the Perry brothers were able to convince Tom Mix to come and film his one of his movies here. And it proved to Hollywood that you can take your film location, you can have it filmed on a different location.
Right. Yeah.
And so that history, that whole expansion for Hollywood came because of those brothers sitting in Cedar City's Main Street,
right,
going, let's make it happen. And so that Tom Mix film was the first one to be filmed in Utah.
Yeah.
And so
that Stagecoach, is that what it was called? I can't remember what
the Dead Coach.
The Dead Coach. Yeah.
Deadwood, right?
No.
Isn't it Deadwood Coach?
No, or is it? I thought it was
Google it.
Google it, my friend. So Dallas was part of that celebration, but I swear it was the Deadwood Coach. Yeah, you're right. It's probably the Deadwood Coach.
There we go.
Deadwood Coach, which is no longer in existence. There's not a copy of it anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
Which is really
Paul
sad.
Ryan Paul. I'm always like, which way is his name again? He was a guest. Sorry, Ryan.
If you're listening.
I'm sure he's used to that. But yeah, I mean, he went into a lot of great detail about that. But what's interesting to me about that is think of so many big films that have been done in Utah or this southern Utah area, from southwestern Utah to southeastern Utah. So many big. I mean, it wasn't Back to the Future in Utah as well?
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Thelma and Louise. Was it Forrest Gump?
Part of Forrest Gump. Yeah. Part of Yellowstone, the series has been taking place here in Utah, has been being filmed here. And so that history started here.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to think that this is where it all started.
Yeah. To be able to say that we're the birthplace of that happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
and how big of an impact that actually was to Hollywood filmmaking. It wasn't just isolated to Utah.
Yeah.
It was huge in that this meant we could take our films elsewhere and film them elsewhere.
The entrepreneurial nature of the Perry brothers, in a lot of ways, we'll go as far as to say open the eyes of Hollywood of you could go on site. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Ryan had mentioned was they made it as easy as possible for them. Yeah. Because obviously one of the big barriers is cost to come do it, right? Mm-hmm. And anyways, I that was another tangent I wanted to kind of go on.
But you think about, we've built an incentive program here in the state of Utah to encourage that continuation of filmmaking here and film producing here in Utah.
Yeah.
And so when you hear about it this time of year, particularly because we're just past the legislative session, but when we can provide an incentive to produce films here in Utah, there's an economic impact.
Yeah.
And because they hire locals, they utilize lodging, they, utilize restaurants and catering. And so it comes back to us, let alone being a postcard for our state or for our area.
That's great. Okay, so tell me, what else do we have going on? We've talked about Shakespeare Festival. We've talked about some of the national parks. Oh, you know what? We haven't really talked about Bryan Head. You want to highlight Bryan Head and what they have going on?
So we love Bryan Head. What a great little community. They just celebrated 50 years of being Bryan Head. And
you're talking Bryan Head town. Okay.
And then 60 years of being a resort.
Right.
So the resort came first, the ski resort, and then
town built around it.
So it's been a ski resort community for 60 years. And it has built a reputation of being very family friendly, very obtainable. Great place to learn to ski and advance your skills. And just
quick to get to.
No lines, no crowds. Yeah. Very it's a family. It looks like a family business. And now it's owned by a corporation, but it's built a reputation of being like a family business. Mm-hmm. And so they have really good skiing in the wintertime. And then they've invested in infrastructure for mountain biking. So when mountain biking first started, and this is how back in my day, when I started with things. So mountain biking was just barely starting. Brian Head was one of those places that was really premier.
Yeah.
They were, killing it in terms of creating trails and creating a mountain bike destination. And so
we had Mac Urey on talking all about the trails all throughout mountain biking trails.
And
Ironcraft, right?
Yeah, with Ironcraft. But they were utilizing like sheep trails and just building them out.
Yeah.
They were naturally just there.
Yeah.
Because of the sheep, we were grazing sheep on Brian Head Mountain, or where Brian Head is. And so they've built this amazing downhill product for mountain biking. So summertime is definitely, they're killing it with mountain biking. And then the resort has added some summer activities so that families can come and enjoy on weekends, like tubing and some, like bungee bungee thing and a little mini zip line and whatnot. But they have big plans, and they're working. Part of their land is on Forest Service, so they have to work through
go through that process
for land use. But they're fully anticipating that they're going to double in size in the next couple of years.
They've already doubled in size the last few years, right? I think recently they were at something like 300,000 ski days. Am I correct on that?
In terms of skiers, they used to kind of hover around 150, and then we started doing cooperative marketing with them and through this grant money from the state, and they've been able to market in a way because we're leveraging funds and get more people to go there. And then they're since they've been acquired by Mountain Properties, MCP, they have put in a lot more effort into their marketing, and so they're just really doing really well. And getting people there to go skiing.
Are they adding more lifts?
Yes. So that's part of this whole process that they're doing with the Forest Services, so that they can add more lifts and more acreage.
Yeah.
So by the time they're done, and it's like a 30-year plan, they'll be the 7th largest resort in Utah.
Right. Well, what I love is from when you get off the freeway, I-15 to Brian Head, we're talking maybe like 15, 20 minutes of a drive with no traffic. I'm sorry, my friends up in northern Utah. I'm going to go on a tangent about that in a second. The base of Brian Head is the highest base in the state.
Yes. So we have the highest base elevation at 9,500 feet.
Wow.
And then it's 2 mountains. So it's called Navajo Mountain, where people learn to ski. It's beginner. And then they have Giant Steps Mountain, which is intermediate and more advanced. But the thing that kills me as a skier, it kills me every single time I go up there, and I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky. I pull in the parking lot, I get out my skis, I walk 150 feet.
Yeah.
And I'm on the lift line.
It's amazing.
know, and you go anywhere else any ski resort, you're sometimes being shuttled in from your parking lot, let alone you have to take a gondola or whatever it is. And you're just, and it took you 2 hours to get there, from the valley.
Yeah. Just from down low in the valley. It took you 2 hours by the time you're actually skiing. I had some friends who, they saw this, some snow was coming in, and they're like, let's go down to Brian Head. They looked at the prices, which were significantly cheaper for their whole family. And, they drove 3 hours. Now, 3 hours is still sometimes less amount of time than actually living there and getting ready, dealing with the traffic, getting ready and going. And they stayed at like an Airbnb just right off of the mountain, which was so fun for them. They came and hung out with us too down here in town, but it said a lot. And there's a CEO that I was talking to last year, and we were talking about the growth of Brian Head. And I remember he said, "Our little Brian Head, our Brian Head," and we get so many visitors from Vegas, from California, coming to this area and buoying up what we're doing. In fact, we haven't really gone into that. Talk to me about first domestic visitorship, where maybe first let's go small to big, where we see Utah area or our kind of region. It could include Vegas, where we see some of the most visits, and then throughout the U.S. and then internationally, where do you see?
So for us in Iron County, and we're different from our neighbors. So Washington County, where Zion is, or Garfield County, where Bryce Canyon National Parks are. We're mostly a domestic destination. So our people come from the Wasatch Front, Las Vegas, and then it spreads out, and then it's like Southern California, Phoenix, Arizona, and then it spreads out, Western states.
And you're talking tourism in general, or are you talking just Brian Head?
Tourism in general.
Okay, that's what I was getting at too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tourism in our county is mostly domestic. And then it just kind of goes out like that. We do see quite a bit actually coming out of Texas and Minnesota for some reason. So, but most of it is a Western region kind of, and it's because we have an interstate. So we're just so highly connected to Interstate 15 and then 70.
Yeah.
And then we do see international visitation because of our location to the national parks. And so most of that international visitation comes from Canada. Canadians love to get in their cars and drive to destinations. And so
a lot of them come by car, not by plane.
They'll come by car because they like to be south in certain times of year. Yeah. And so they kind of drive through. They do plane too.
Go south for the winter. But
they do. And it's nothing to them to go on a 2-week road trip. And so we see a lot of that. We're starting to see more from Mexico, which is kind of interesting, particularly like in Brian Head. And then, of course, your givens, like the UK, France, Italy, the Dutch area, those European countries are typically, because they have longer vacation times. Many countries, international countries they have 6 weeks of vacation.
We need to work on that.
We need to work on that.
We do. Yeah.
So, and we've done work in Australia too. So, but internationally, we don't see as much as like Zion or Bryce, than where it's majority of their visitation is coming from people outside of the country. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Do you see much from the Asian countries?
Yeah. So sorry about that. Yes. So China was definitely like number 2 for the longest time. But then when COVID hit and all that, it dropped. But now it's starting to resurge.
Yeah.
And then India, because they have a new middle class that's coming up, and so we're starting to see more and more from India.
Oh, that is cool.
So it's interesting to see where people are coming from.
And do you target market some of the international?
Yeah. So we have somebody who's on contract who works for us, and that is her. A lot of international comes through trade companies. So like either a tour operator or some sort of operation. Yeah. Similar to like a travel agency or something like that. And so we target them and try to convince them as they're making these plans or assisting their clients or creating tours that they should include our area. And so it's a lot about networking and knowing people. So we don't target individuals like you do with domestic marketing. Yeah. We target business operations.
Gotcha.
So, and it's interesting because you bring that up. So things are happening that are going to create some change for Cedar City, particularly. So in 2026, the tunnel through Zion is going to close to motor coaches and large vehicles, which are RVs, trailers, semis. And so they're being rerouted, and they're being rerouted either down through the south, through Fredonia and whatnot, or they're being rerouted through Cedar City.
Yeah. It's the only way to get basically from Moab to here, right?
Well, from Zion to Bryce, that's the only way they're going to be able to get there.
Oh, I was thinking like, if they're doing like seen all 5 of the parks, but I didn't even think about, from Zion to Bryce, they're not going to have that direct connection.
They're not
going to
have that connection. So,
because of the tunnel. Oh, that's
because
right.
Because of that tunnel. So Zion to Bryce or Zion to Grand Canyon is now being rerouted in 2026. And so we're going to see some changes in Cedar City.
Of some of that visitorship.
Yeah, I think we're going to see quite a bit. And it's going to impact that international market, because that's how many of them see our national parks, is either in a bus or they come in and they rent like those RVs that are, what are they, like little cruise? They're called Cruise Americas.
Yeah, Cruise America. That's what I was thinking.
Or they're just, and so they're going to be like, well, Cedar City it's either Cedar City or Fredonia. Yeah. So I think they're going to pick Cedar City, as part of their reroute.
I was trying to think of Cruise America, and all I could think was this line. Did you ever see, this is really incriminating. Did you ever see the movie IQ, like the 90s, rom-com movie with Meg Ryan? Anyways, her uncle in this movie, this is really random, is supposedly Albert Einstein. Oh. And they're like modifying his car to be a convertible, and it's a Chevrolet, and his friend, he has these German friends, and he's like, Caesar, you are saying your Chevrolet, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry. You guys can make a reel out of that, Dallas, for me. But
don't.
But what you were talking about made me think of all these international visitors that they're trying to see the USA, maybe not in their Chevrolet, but they're trying to see some of the landscapes that we have. When you talk about people from France and Italy coming, I mean, there are some of the most world-renowned places in France and Italy, landscapes to go see. Yet they also come here. Yeah. And when Hayden Hawks was on the podcast, he talked about how he's run races in some of those places, and still one of the most beautiful runs that he's been on is that trail system that goes from here to Cedar City to Zion National Park. And so it just shows kind of the uniqueness of the landscapes that we have here that is nowhere else in the world. You can't experience it in the same way.
Yeah, we take it for granted that there are red rocks outside of the window. And people will spend tens of thousands of dollars to come here to experience our red rocks.
Yeah.
And so that experience, we want to ensure that experience is great. And so those touch points when they're coming along, and, whether it's what they encounter on a trail or who they encounter at the convenience store or how they're checked into a hotel, those are all really important, because people have invested
a lot of money to come see us,
and they're bringing outside dollars in, and it's circulating, and it's improving our whole area, you know, because it's tax dollars that gets to be spent on things that we all get to enjoy. So
on that note, I really wanted you to, briefly, but there's a point I want to get at. Talk to us, explain very briefly. You mentioned a little bit earlier how your department is funded and why that's so essential. And then the second half of that is what the local benefit of that is, or there's multiple benefits. So talk about your budget and TRT and where that comes from and why that's so essential.
So like I said, we have 2 sources of funding: transient room tax, which is the tax on room nights, and then what's called a restaurant tax, which is tourism, recreation, cultural, airport, and convention tax. It's a long word.
And that's almost 100%, at least the TRT, from people visiting.
Yeah. So TRT is people who are visiting, and it's legislated very heavily. It has very specific requirements
of what you can use it for.
What we can use it for. Yeah. So we can't buy a school bus with it. Let's just put it that way. But we can use it on advertising to bring more people into the area to spend dollars.
Right.
And add to the tax base. And so that's what we do with that. So majority of what we do with that money is towards advertising, getting, people to come here and spend their dollars.
But that advertising, it sounds like when you say that, I think most people are going to think just like Facebook ads, but you're also talking like signage and things that beautify like our historic downtown, which we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
Like,
we have a 2-hour podcast going on here.
I know exactly. so touch on some of that as well. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. It's just so we can spend it on those kind of advertising aspects. What you think, billboards, TV, whatnot. We also invest it heavily into events. So we have faith in people who are passionate about what they're doing, trying to create an event.
And we're known as Festival City USA, right? Here in Cedar City.
Festival City USA, which comes from, of course, the Utah Shakespeare Festival. And then the Utah Summer Games came after that, has this long history. And so then everyone...
And it trickles into all these other communities.
Yeah, it trickles into all these other communities. And so on the basis that people from outside of Iron County are coming in and spending dollars. So, and just adding to the tax base. And then we have, and so we spend it on the advertising, or we spend it on infrastructure, which can be like we helped build the theaters over at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. We bonded and used public dollars to help build those beautiful theaters. And we've helped with signage, and we've helped with, creating areas for people that are tourism related. And then we have this other fund, the restaurant tax, which is the 1% tax on everything on prepared food in Iron County, which comes back to the county. And it's legislated as well. It has to go towards tourism, recreation, cultural, convention, and airport facilities.
Because then when you're advertising for people to come here, they're spending their dollars here, which are going into our businesses, right?
Yeah, going into our businesses, who are developing bigger businesses or even coming and creating a business. And so without tourism and without people coming here, many businesses aren't created. So I love to tell that story too. And then we take this infrastructure dollars and we create infrastructure. So trails, theaters, convention centers, visitor centers, all kinds of things throughout the county that add to the quality of life, but are essentially paid for by people who don't live here.
Exactly. So like we are enhancing, and that's the point I was really getting at, and I'll continue, even though I'm interrupting here, is the level of quality of life that we get is not paid from our taxpayers. Supporting the Visitors Bureau can help us better enhance our infrastructure and the outdoor things that we can do, the cultural things that we can go see and participate in, right?
Yeah, because I can tell you, most people who live here love our trails.
Yeah.
Well, those trails are supported by dollars that come from tourism.
That tourists are paying for.
Yeah. And that beautiful theater at the Shakespeare Festival, we all get to enjoy it. We all get to enjoy those grounds. Well, that's supported by tourism.
And that's a big chunk is TRT tax.
Those
from just staying at a hotel.
From staying at a hotel or going out to
a restaurant.
Eat.
Yeah.
And then you look at businesses. They're particularly restaurants. Everybody wants to go to a good restaurant.
Yes. And people like good local foods,
and they want good local food.
Yeah.
Well, most of those good local food places would not, they can't be supported just on residents alone. They're being created and being invested in because there are people coming here and spending their dollars.
Right.
So we all have a list of restaurants we'd love to see here and we'd love to have, or, a type. Yeah. Without visitors coming and spending their dollars, those
not even possible.
It's not even possible.
Yeah.
So it's just like the more we can invest in sports tourism, like with the Utah Summer Games, we can invest in the Shakespeare Festival because those are higher dollar visitors. They spend 3 days, they buy tickets that are $80 to $100 a piece. They're definitely spending dollars at Bullet, like a Bullet Drug. And the winery and things like that, in the downtown.
Yeah.
And so, those businesses are here because they have support from visitation.
Well, one thing I want to touch on too is, I get asked all the time, well, why can't you get a Costco here? Or why can't you get a Target or an Olive Garden or whatever it is? And I'm like, do you guys know that those large chains want like 100,000 populations in a 5-mile radius. And one of the aspects, but actually, before I go on a tangent too much, I've gotten some of those big chains in other communities that weren't 100,000 in a 5-mile radius. And that's because I was able to demonstrate where people were coming from. Mm-hmm. And huge part of Iron County is we have so many people coming from these surrounding rural communities and from tourism. Tourism plays a huge role into feeding our businesses to help attract those businesses that locals want.
That we all want.
Yeah, which normally we couldn't get. I mean, Walmart, it was the number one grossing Walmart in the state here in Cedar City. It may have gone down to 2 this year, but it's always up there in the top. And that has a lot to do with the surrounding rural that are coming here, as well as the tourism. And the next point that I'm trying to make is one of the things that impressed me when I was looking at Cedar City and I'm looking at, this job as economic development director was actually visit Cedar City's website. And it's no surprise to me when you started saying you went to school for marketing communications, right? But we are punching so far above our weight in our marketing efforts. And I think a lot of it has to do with this diversity of tourism that we have, mm-hmm. which has helped diversify our general economy. And anyways, punching above our weight is one thing that I really want to wanted to highlight, because the things that we're able to do are our little Brian head, mm-hmm. right? That mm-hmm. it's doing, like that CEO said to me. It just amazes me the things that we've been able to accomplish. And so supporting that tourism if the planning is done right, yes, which that's your job, is to help plan for it mm-hmm. correctly. That's part of my job, to help plan for it correctly. As we can plan correctly, we can preserve what we love about the community, that small town collaborative feel that we talked about earlier, while at the same time leveraging mm-hmm. tourism and businesses that want to be here or that we're trying to convince to be here to help increase that quality of life for our residents, everything from the cultural things to what stores they can go shop at, right? So sorry, that was a long monologue digression.
But it shows that how lucky we are that we're diversified, mm-hmm. meaning we don't rely on one business over the other. Yeah. Where some places that,
that's all they have to fund
everything. Yeah. And sometimes tourism is that role. Yeah. Particularly in rural areas.
Yeah. Some communities, without tourism, they'd be dead. They'd be dead. Yeah.
And so we're very fortunate here in Iron County. We're diversified, but we still know what, that we like to have these like pillars of what we're going to focus on. And I love the fact that we're coming into this role or actually understanding our role better in terms of we are a good part of the community. We make things better. We keep the money roll, we keep, things
keep it coming in.
Keep it coming in. Yeah. And everybody gets to enjoy what we have going on. And I feel like too, we're really good at incremental. Like we're getting to that. Like when you have too much
at once.
Too much at once. I mean, it can be it could ruin what you invested mm-hmm. you bought a house here and, we don't want that to be ruined. It
makes it more manageable.
Yeah. We want it to be incremental. We want it to be manageable. We want it to be what the community wants. We want the community to buy in. And, mm-hmm. And so I love what we're trying to do and as develop professionals, that we're all trying to work together and have this amazing destination that actually at some point people do want to live in.
Well, and I think just the collaboration between my office of economic development, your office of tourism, and then the individuals that you and I meet with, mm-hmm. From SUU or Southwest Tech or Department of Workforce Services. There's there's the counties, the cities. We're regularly meeting and collaborating. Mm-hmm. We're regularly talking to business owners and people from the public, like you said, to create that vision so that as we do it incrementally, we're doing it right.
Right.
And, not everybody's going to love every little aspect, but we're at least trying to do it the best we can mm-hmm. so that we don't have like the Mighty Five worry.
Yeah.
Where it grew and it boomed and it was awesome, but it was hard to handle. We're trying to make it in a manageable way. And that's kind of a very, I don't know, maybe academic or whatever you want to call bureaucratic kind of way of looking at things. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's strategic. That's how I view it. It's strategic in how we're growing. Let's grow it right.
And I love the fact that it is strategic, that we're just like, we're not throwing stuff at a wall and hoping it sticks.
Yeah.
We're taking what we naturally have and just enhancing it as best as we can and creating partnerships in the process. So it's been fun. I mean, it's literally it's so fun it's hard. It's not, people think it's a party every day when you talk tourism, and it's not. It's strategic. It's, networking. It's trying to get people who maybe don't get along to get along. And so, but it's so worth it at the end of the day because I live here and I get to enjoy it and I get to tell people about it. So it's fun.
It's also balancing what we want, what the locals want, like you said, because you live here, and what's going to help us continue to be successful. Before we close, one thing I just got to pay you a compliment on. You talked about being in your role for almost 30 years, or has it been 30 years?
It's been 30 years.
I am so used to, I work a ton. I work in government, and usually a lot of times when you meet people that have been in even 15 plus years, it feels very status quo. Yeah. It feels, well, this is the way we've always been doing it. And one thing that's really impressed me about you in particular and the way you've managed our tourism, and that's why I brought up punching above our weight, is you're not status quo. You're not saying, this is how we did it since 1996 or whatever. And so I love that. And I really appreciate the partnerships that we have here. I mean, there's so many great things that we have going on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you kind of want to throw out there or talk about before we wrap up?
Well, I'll just come back and we'll have another show at some point.
We should. Yeah.
Totally. But I just love what I get to do every single day. And the fact that I pride myself on it, trying to be innovative and try to figure out new ways of doing things, and but also honoring the old ways of doing things, and ensuring that we're kind of keeping the legacy going, I guess you could say. And so, but it's been a pleasure working for, who works for the same company for 30 years? Not very many people anymore.
Right out of college.
Yeah. But it's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure, doing what I'm doing and meeting people like you guys, you and your staff, and just all the people that I get to work with every single day. It's never the same, and it's always something different. And it's so great. And it's just, and at the end of the day, when you see somebody who comes into town and they got a smile on their face and they've had the best day ever out on the trail, and they share that story with you, I mean, it just makes it so worth it. Yeah. Every single day.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on, Maria, with the Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau, to make it sound really fancy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.